Good Wednesday, everybody. It's Jim, it's Matt, and we're here today to talk a little bit about college football and then the MVP situation in the NFL. So, Matthew, before we got out of here yesterday because we ran a little long, we didn't get a chance to talk about something that's very something you have been very interested in the past few days, and that's LSU and Brian Kelly. That's getting really interesting in the buyout section.
Yeah, they're going back now on really what they had agreed on in principle when they offered him that contract when they decided to fire him.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to pay him half of what he's due. And Jim, you have a better understanding and insight into the way the contracts and everything work. But from my understanding, the only way that LSU would be able to pay Brian Kelly just half of his buyout is if Brian Kelly, out of the goodness of his heart, said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take a deal."
Yeah, well, he's not gonna.
No.
Here's the hang up. Okay, the contract and all coach. I should say this: all coaches' contracts have what, in essence, is a morals clause or a clause meaning fire with cause. In other words,
Mhm.
what Brian Kelly would have done something that violated the University of, well, in this case, Louisiana State University's, um, you know, whatever their code of conduct is, right? Whatever
Mhm.
is written in the contract is a code of conduct. The fact that he lost football games is not cause.
No.
Okay. So they're meaning LSU is arguing, they fired him for a cause. Brian Kelly's side is arguing, well, you can't, because the only cause you have is you didn't want me to coach the football team anymore. So this is going to head to a court, and you know, if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd put 80% Brian Kelly's going to win. Not, and then the remaining 20% would be on not LSU winning, but it may be going to binding arbitration. One way or another, LSU is going to pay him that money.
Mhm.
Uh, it, I don't see any way out of it. When you fire somebody, and the other thing is they want him to go seek employment, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other clause. The other clause is he has to go to seek employment. Well,
Mhm.
Again, that wasn't in the contract. So, it's like they're making stuff up as they go along. And so what's going to happen is this is going to drag on.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing in the world that LSU needs right now, is for something like this to drag on.
They
And if you didn't, if you were even pondering the possibility of taking that job because it is LSU, it went from probably one of the top, and we talked about this, one of the top jobs in the entire country, to I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Mhm. And it's gonna keep heading that way. For as long as they keep this up. They had an opportunity a couple weeks ago when they hired their university president.
Mm-hmm.
They had an opportunity to where they could have went and hired an AD in time
Mm-hmm.
for the coaching cycle to truly open up at the end of the year, and kind of have a base and a foundation set for somebody to walk back into. In other words, they had time to fix what Jeff Landry had messed up in the
Right.
meantime. That's not happened. If I remember correctly, that he they said that Scott Woodward didn't have the power to fire him, and so he hasn't actually been officially terminated. If he hasn't been officially terminated, why hadn't he been in the building then?
Right.
You know,
You also haven't been paid.
Yeah, he hadn't been paid either. So it's just it's just a horrible look, because I can say this with 100% certainty. If you could not fire Ed Orgeron for cause, you definitely will not be able to fire Brian Kelly for cause. Because I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you had a lot more cause to fire Ed Orgeron during his time as the LSU head coach than you do for firing Brian Kelly during his time as the head coach. Just because he went to the beach in peak recruiting season, that wasn't in his contract.
Right.
That's not cause. So it's it's a really, really bad look overall for LSU because they've taken a top five job and Jeff Landry ran it through the mud. Okay, and then we got like a 2 week breather, and then now they've just decided to recycle it and keep running that job through the mud. It's like they don't want to compete in football. I'm not saying the fans of LSU, but like the higher ups at LSU right now, whoever is pulling the strings, which I would assume is Jeff Landry, it's like they don't want LSU to be good. And for as Republican a state as Louisiana is, I can tell you one thing: if Jeff Landry runs this LSU football program into the ground, he can kiss. I don't know if he is eligible for it, but if he is, he could kiss reelection goodbye.
He may have to move to another state.
Yeah, they'll run him out completely.
Right.
I mean,
Forget reelection.
yeah,
Consider relocation. Usually, what happens in cases like this is you get the names that will pop up that will potentially take that job are guys who are retreads,
hmm
guys that you know maybe had some success somewhere, but then it flamed out and didn't work, and so you know they'll take the money. Um, First of all, we don't know how much money they're going to have to spend
hmm
because right now, they're burning billable hours with lawyers trying to figure this out. Kelly can sit back and say, okay, I can wait for a while and see how this works out.
hmm
And eventually it's going to, as I say, it's probably going to go to court. And there just doesn't seem to me to be a path where this ends well for LSU. Um, there have been a lot of coaches fired that
hmm
have done a lot, as you said, a lot more than what Brian Kelly did. Brian Kelly just lost football games.
Yep.
Okay, you can dislike how he handled, the program, but he violated no morals clause. He violated nothing with regard to trying to get kids into the university that shouldn't be in the university. There's nothing, so there was no NCAA thing hanging over their head.
hmm
They just didn't get like Brian Kelly for whatever the reason may be. And whether it's because they didn't like Scott Woodward or whether they didn't like Brian Kelly or why the governor decided on one night because they lost a football game to decide at that point in time, I'm going to enter myself into this mess and just extract Brian Kelly. Well, that's great, but if your goal is to make LSU win, it's not exactly the plan to do it.
No, it's not. And I just don't know where they're going to go from here. Is really the biggest thing is who is going to want to take that job? You said it's going to be retreads. Is it going to be a guy like John Gruden? Or I mean, at this point,
Oh no, that's even Gruden wouldn't take that job. No.
yeah. Well, at this point, it feels like they're almost heading down a path to where you're looking at something like bringing Ed Orgeron back, if nothing else, just to be a stopgap until you maybe get some stuff figured out. Because right now, the optics around that job, it's seemingly impossible that anyone with like an understanding of what it is right now and
Hmm.
anyone with positive momentum moving forward in their coaching career would want to take that job right now.
Well, no. Um, I'll throw a name out there, and I hope he doesn't do it. But I'll throw a name out there, and that's Gus Malzahn.
Mm,
Gus is at an age where his next job is going to be his last job,
yeah.
and so he may say, "All right, look, it's a mess, but there's talent in Louisiana, and I can get enough of it to to win.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even contend for a playoff. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of person I'm looking at. I'm looking at a guy who is on the back end of his career, who has had success, other places, but then hit a bump in the road, and just wants one last chance.
Yeah.
And that's what you're gonna do. I don't know, a guy like an Eric Bieniemy, um,
Mm-hmm.
who has been both in the college and the pro ranks, might be there. So there's names that could pop up, but there are names that are guys north of 50,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not your long term coach. And and there are names that have had success, but recent failure. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the position they're in right now.
Yeah. Another name that I'm just kind of curious, maybe not for LSU in particular, just curious in general because of the success he's had at the place he's had, is Jim Mora, who has a chance to win 9 games at UConn this year.
Yeah.
He's done a fantastic job. I mean, they sold out that stadium in November,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that a few years ago was inconceivable at UConn. Like
Right.
there was not even 100 fans, much less
Mm-hmm.
sold out. So he's done a fantastic job there. And they've had a really good year. And I would assume that he's probably going to get some looks at some places.
Mm-hmm.
UCLA is another place where you're probably looking at more of a retread guy just because that job's not all that appealing right now either.
Right.
So that's another place he's been at before. That's an interesting fit. But yeah.
It's if I'm an LSU fan, I'm really, I can't be mad at Brian Kelly.
Mm-mm. No,
Can't
you.
be. I mean, he did what he was asked to do. Now you can argue all you want to whether he did it right, meaning on the field, but there's nothing in Brian Kelly's the style that Brian Kelly ran his program that would lead you to believe that he's done anything either illicit or immoral or you know colored outside the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that Brian Kelly, in his history, right, it's not easy to coach at Notre Dame, and there's a lot of guardrails up at Notre Dame. There's a lot of guardrails up at Notre Dame, and just getting kids into Notre Dame is not an easy task.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian Kelly has always, you can like him, you don't like him, whatever, that's okay. But you can't say anything about Brian Kelly not being a, upstanding, straight up guy. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan, and I'm for some reason I'm taking his side. I'm taking his side because, in fairness, Brian Kelly is a football coach, and he is not someone who is prone to breaking rules.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're ticked off because he's not winning, okay, fire him. But you also have to pay him
Yeah.
because that's the way the thing works. Now, if you're jerking around with the contract, as it seems as if and remember that the board of regents at LSU is appointed by the governor, so just take that into consideration for what it's worth. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't see any way that they're going to get out of this, and the only way they can get out of it would be if Brian decided to, for reasons known only to himself, give him a hometown discount and say, forget it. Look, guys, just pay me 35 and I'm out of here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Brian's going to do it, and I don't think his agent's going to let him do it.
Yeah. Jim, quick question. Are we live?
Yeah.
We are? Okay.
Mhm.
It just isn't showing up like we are. Or it shows up it showed up a little differently. I was just double checking.
Let me check again. All right. Well, we were live and then we weren't. So let's pick it back up again. Let's start. We are in the conversation about Brian Kelly, and we're talking about. Let me just sum it up real quick. That Brian is due. What is it? $53 million.
I think it was like 49.
Okay.
It's somewhere in that high 40s, low 50s
All
number.
right. Let's just say for sake of argument, let's round up to 50. All right.
Yeah.
LSU is backing off of wanting to pay him because they're firing him for what they call cause. Brian Kelly is countering by saying he didn't violate any rules, ergo there's no reason to fire me for cause because I didn't violate anything. So they can't fire him for cause. That's his case. We talked about the possibility of retreads, guys like Gus Malzahn, you know, perhaps Jim Mora, who's at UConn. Although, given what you said, Matt, and I agree with you, he may be a good fit at a school where he doesn't have to worry about the grief of what goes on at LSU. So that's where we are, and we're continuing that conversation. So if for somehow, and I'm not sure what happened, things got um, you know messed up. We are now back on track, and uh, that's under the helmet. And what's up? That's what we're telling you. What's up? And thanks very much for the kind words. Meanwhile, back to you. All right, it's the ball's in your court on this on the coaching situation.
I think the question I would ask LSU is if you have cause to fire him, um, then why didn't you come out with that in the first place? And second off, if you had cause to fire him, why did you offer him half of it and a lump sum? Like that was their initial offer, was just to try to
Mm-hmm.
take half and one lump sum.
Right.
You're offering him that, it's proof that you don't have a lot of ground to stand on when it comes to firing for cause.
No. Um, it's this is it. This is going to be. This is actually going to be a test case, I would think, for universities who fire people. Head coaches, because right now there's been an epidemic of coaching firings and just paying them off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to wonder at what point are the boosters going to say, you know what, we just hired and fired 3 coaches, in a 8 or 10 year period. Why are we doing this? Where are you guys looking to find these guys? I mean, FSU's right in that boat right now. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have the money to fire Mike Norvell? They don't. I don't think anybody there knows right now. Is they firing a Mike Norvell? If they fire him, what are they going to have to do? I mean, his assistant, they have like 25 people in that football department. Are they going to fire all 25 of them? And then we just start totally over again? So down in Florida, the situation with Billy Napier, and there'll be more and more and more of them as they go along. And there's one, we talked about um, Frank Wright is only holding that job at Stanford as a placeholder till they figure out what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Luck out there. So there's going to be, and Lord knows there's going to be more coaching jobs at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So let's just say there's 8 or 10 more, which is, I don't think, out of the realm of possibility. If you're an agent, how do you structure your client's contract so they don't end up in this LSU situation? And then if you're a university, how do you set this up so that if you do have to fire somebody, that you don't have to, you can pay them perhaps in some deferred maybe that your contract that you go for is deferred money, which is basically, saying we will pay you X over 5, 6, 8, 10 years, unless you get a job, coaching somewhere else, which reduces it to another number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which you said the clause that was in James Franklin's contract at Penn State where he has to look for work
Right.
was not in Brian Kelly's contract, correct?
That's correct.
And they're, once again searching and hoping that he will take a job elsewhere. What the odds of that right now, I don't feel like Brian Kelly, at least this is more of a general sense. I'm not sure Brian Kelly is looking to jump right back into coaching.
No. I'll give you an example of it. Dan Mullen had
Mm-hmm.
money that Florida owed him. He took a year off, went to ESPN. That didn't count against him from his coaching standpoint. Then he took the job at UNLV,
Mm-hmm.
and so there was a he still gets paid by Florida, but it's reduced because of the fact that he's also being paid by UNLV. That's kind of standard, okay, how it works. It's
Mm-hmm.
if you go out and get another coaching job, um, let's say you were paid $7 million by the team that you were fired by, and you took a coaching job that pays you $3 million. Okay, um, so they'll fill in the balance. So in other words, they would only have to pay $4 million to you instead of $7 million a year until the buyout goes.
Mm-hmm. You know,
So that's how it normally works in pretty much almost all of the contracts.
yeah.
So if Brian were to get a job, and let's say whatever he was being paid at LSU was probably close to $10 million. Um, let's just say it was eight, just for the sake of argument. And he goes out and gets a job where he's getting four or five. Well, then it's the in between.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, this particular situation is a total mess because he was fired because, as far as I can tell, the governor didn't like him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we know the governor didn't like Scott Woodward.
Right.
I I don't know if the governor didn't like Brian Kelly. I don't know if the governor didn't like the way LSU football was going. He didn't like something, and it is clear that he very much stepped in because after they lost to A&M, there was a meeting that he called at his house,
Mm-hmm.
which, if I remember correctly, I don't know who said it, but there was somebody who was present at the meeting and said it was a very odd set of circumstances in the fashion that the meeting was called, if I remember correctly.
Well, normally you don't. The athletic department doesn't get called over to the president's office or house or wherever to speak about the coach being fired, unless there's some egregious thing that happened that they need to get that guy out of there. That was not the case with Kelly. I mean, he lost a football game.
Yeah, I guess Texas A&M fans doing the Saul Varsity's horns off in Baton Rouge was enough cause for that meeting to be called.
Well, it might be, but it may be a very costly one for LSU because I mean, don't forget that if they do go to court, which is where it looks like it's going,
Hmm.
and if Kelly wins, he not only wins his money, he also wins the court costs.
Yeah,
So it's if I'm Brian Kelly's agent, I'm not even coming. I'm not even answering their phone.
yeah. No, I mean there's no point to. They
Yeah,
they have almost
there's no
no
leverage there.
stand on. Yeah, they have nothing to stand on. It feels like they're grasping at straws at this point. And I wonder at what point they finally just kind of look at it, understand what it is, and cut their losses instead of going through with this. And it doesn't seem like a situation where they're going to have some form of like a come to Jesus moment and be like, hey, like what are we doing here? But it would be beneficial if they would. They need to, because the more time they spend on this and the more resources they pour into this, the more resources you're pulling away, not only from that football program, but from that athletic department in general. And football is one thing right now, but their athletic department has been very successful over the last
Yeah.
5 years. And when you pull funds from the other departments, women's basketball, men's basketball,
Hmm.
baseball, gymnastics, everything around LSU, then you're probably going to sacrifice some of the success that you're having in the other areas as well, because you've won national titles in baseball. If
Mm-hmm.
I remember correctly, they've won two in the past
Mm-hmm.
5 years. You won one in gymnastics. You won one in women's basketball. You have had success throughout your athletics. Football is always will be the end all be all in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
But if they keep going down this path, they're not only going to lose their football program, they're probably going to lose some funding for in some other places, and they will suffer as well.
Well, I can tell you that the University of Florida had that problem after Urban Meyer left. It was, remember, of course, Urban said that he had health issues. I think it was, it was the stress of coaching was too much,
Hmm.
and so they replaced him, and it wasn't because, I mean, there was no drama in it. There was just a matter of Urban resigning. He stayed at the university. He had, you know, had an office at the, in the athletic department, and so Florida had that issue when they, when they fired or when Urban left, of what do we do to fill this void, and they went through a couple of coaches till they found somebody who they thought was going to be their guy, and I think that what we're seeing right now with NIL and with the portal and all that is universities are getting away from hiring athletic directors, and they're hiring general managers. They're hiring people who understand the professional model versus guys who understand what used to be the AD relationship on how that works.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
and that's the right move. As you continue to go down the path of NIL and everything like
mhm.
that, and especially as you head towards what I think most people believe will end up being a much more NFL model when it comes to football, that you need a more business minded person at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, we were talking about Andrew Luck, right?
Hmm.
Or Oliver Luck. I'm sorry. Um,
It's Andrew.
is it Andrew? Okay.
Hmm.
I get those two guys mixed up. Anyway, um, I mean, Andrew was had, has had professional NFL and USFL and other professional league relationships and understandings, and knows how how that world works. And I think that's, what's going on. You got Brett Yormark, who's the commissioner over at the Big 12, who understands because of his relationship with pro sports, and how it all works. If you're not looking in that direction and you're a major university, you're basically, um, you're going to be behind um, before things get going right. And I think that's where, um, if you've got a program like Georgia or Alabama, you can be a little less concerned about that.
Hmm.
But I think if there's ever a test case right now, if I were LSU, I'd go out and look for a former general manager of an NFL team, or for that matter, um, NBA or Major League Baseball. Just someone who understands how to put together a pro franchise and how to run it, and then run all your sports that way.
Yeah, I can tell you one place that's probably pretty happy that LSU and Jeff Landry and everyone there has turned this really the entire environment into a shit show, and that's the people of Georgia, because Josh Brooks, their current sitting AD,
Mm-hmm.
is an alumni of LSU, and under the normal circumstances, I would say he probably would leave for that LSU job, but these aren't normal circumstances, and he's since put out a statement that he's very happy where he is and he intends on staying put at the University of Georgia. So there's a lot of people around the country. I know Florida fans as well. Like that. I think more than they're willing to admit. When that LSU job came open, I think they knew they were in second place. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
But the way things are now, they don't have to worry about being in second place. The same goes for Penn State, who's got an opening right now,
Hmm.
and really anybody else who opens their job up. Is if when LSU opened up, like the immediate reaction was like, man, this is going to shift the way that everything gets done in terms of this coaching search and this coaching cycle. It's there are people that aren't going to fire their head coaches now because LSU is open, and they don't have as good of a shot at getting maybe a guy off the top end of this coaching pool. That's not the case now. So the seismic shift that this LSU job was supposed to have has
Hmm.
now been nullified by the people at LSU.
Yeah, I mean they anybody in the SEC has to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Who's even pondering, not if you're even if you're not looking for a head coach, right?
Yeah.
um, you're happy that this whole thing came down because you know it's one of those things where you go, oh great, this is wonderful. Chaos, you know, at one university makes it a whole lot better. Make your situation look a whole lot better,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of how bad it might be.
Yeah.
I have had some friends who are close to UCLA situation saying that they were pondering sitting with James Franklin and allowing him to pick either the athletic director or the next, whomever, whatever you want to call it. USF hired the CEO of athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Others have called them the a general manager, whatever you want to call them. A more pro type setting out there, and and see what if that how that would fly with Franklin. Franklin has um, a history out west as well.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that comes about, who knows? But it even so even UCLA may look at one at some point as a better situation than LSU, which really tells you something.
If UCLA is able to rebound and become a better situation
Hmm.
than LSU is, then it is just not that it isn't already, but it is a complete failure on everybody who is involved in that coaching search, who is involved in the search for the athletic director, top to bottom. You're almost talking about like needing a clear cleaning of house. Now that's obviously not possible given the way that the people who are in power there get into power, but it just a complete and total disservice to that state and that university, really. What that job is and should be versus what it is now
Hmm.
is ridiculous. And one more group of people who's very glad that things are going the way things are going at LSU right now is Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. Those are the annual opponents for LSU in this
Hmm.
new 9-game format for the next 4 years. And as things stand right now, you don't really have to worry about LSU.
Hmm.
So they probably are going to take a deep sigh of relief if Ole Miss keeps Lane Kiffin. They're going to take a massive sigh of relief, and not only because they kept him, because now their schedule's a little bit easier. So I don't know. It's just I can't find the perfect way to describe it because it's just mind-boggling what they've done to such a, a fantastic job and
Hmm.
tradition-rich place in college football.
Um, the name Vinny Serrato may not mean a lot to a lot of people, um, but Vinny was an assistant athletic director at Notre Dame. Um, Worked with the 49ers as an assistant general manager. Worked with Washington in that same role. Serrato, um, in a show the other morning, said that his, he has a bunch of scouts in Louisiana that are friends who told him that LSU might have um, as many as 30 to 40 people leave in the portal
Hmm.
because they have no idea who the next coach is and what's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh, I mean, normally people come to LSU in the portal. they they normally do not go the other way. Um, and if that is the case, um, that's going to be a hard. It's going to be a hard sell to get any people that you need back in that, back in the from the LSU side, given the fact you have no idea who the head coach is going to be.
Hmm. And this is after an offseason where they brought some LSU people back. Like Blake
Mm-hmm.
Baker came back as the defensive coordinator, and that
Right.
defense got fixed. They had a couple other position coaches come back that Brian Kelly had fired.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they didn't they didn't go out and get Tommy Moffitt back as their strength and conditioning coach, which was the big headline coming out of that
Right.
BM loss. Um, but it's going to be a long road ahead for LSU if some stuff does not start changing quickly. And when I say long road ahead, I mean we're talking years, because this isn't something where I talk about how a lot of people now believe they're one coach away, and how that can be a deceptive
Mm-hmm.
thought process in terms of some of these programs and hiring head coaches. LSU is going to be a long way away from being a head coach away if they continue to run things the way that they're being ran right now.
Well, yeah, if you lose the amount of talent that they potentially can lose, I mean, if you just we're not going to beat this any much more because we have plenty of other stuff to talk about. But from the LSU situation, it you know this could be a 10-year process,
Yeah.
because if you lose that blue, the kind of blue blood, situation that you feel that you're in, you can't make, as we said, it's gonna be hard for them to make the hire. The by January they're gonna have to have something done, and right now nothing's trending in that way, because even if they go and hire somebody, there's going to be a lawsuit that's going to be pending, because we got the holidays coming up here, so things don't move as fast.
Hmm.
But what does move fast is the recruiting situation,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you can now recruit against LSU.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would be shocked. There's plenty of guys that have talked about how teams are coming in trying to poach players off of
Mm-hmm.
rosters of already fired head coaches. That's going to be no different for LSU. That's just kind of the climate of college football that you live
Mm-hmm.
in, and there's no way to govern poaching. By the way,
No.
anybody, and everybody does it. So your favorite team does it too. It's kind of similar to well, they're paying players back before NIL was allowed. Well, there was a lot of places that were
Yeah.
paying players. Your favorite school probably was too. They just didn't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's a real problem, and it's not like LSU is devoid of talent by any measure either.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have a relatively empty cupboard for whoever comes in there, because unless you're going there to play for LSU, there's no other reason to go to LSU right now.
No, absolutely not. All right, well, let's move on to um, South Florida and down to South Beach in specific, and the University of Miami Hurricanes, who for some reason have a fan base that might be a little delusional about them making the playoffs.
Yeah, I saw some stuff, and I say some stuff, so I'm sure this isn't necessarily a fan base wide thinking, but there's always going to be that group of fans that choose to see the positives and everything, and try and find a path. And today I saw Miami fans on Twitter saying there was two trains of thought that were being shared seemingly simultaneously. One was that they were not ranked high enough because of the people they lost to, those teams' records overall, and who Miami has beaten on the season in terms of Notre Dame. They were displeased with where Notre Dame was ranked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just going to be flat out plain honest with you. The chance isn't zero for Miami making the playoff, but the only way that Miami makes the playoff right now is if they win that ACC title game. And
Mm-hmm.
as things sit right now, there are 6 teams ahead of Miami when it comes to the ACC title race. And of the 6 teams, one of them, SMU, has to lose 2 conference games in order for Miami to jump them.
Mm-hmm.
They're currently tied with Louisville in terms of losses, but Louisville has the head-to-head win against them. And then there's a group of 5 teams that have 1 loss in conference, and they don't all have to play each other by any measure. So the path is very narrow for Miami. Miami couldn't be further from controlling their own destiny. And when you throw all of that on top of it, the way that the playoff rankings are right now, and I think people tend to forget this, is they look at it and they go, top 12, got to make the top 12.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's sitting there at 15, so they probably think they're 3 spots out. They aren't. They're not 3 spots out. You have to be in the top 10 the way things are structured right now. Because as things stand right now, that ACC champion is not in the top 12. That's one of the slots. And that group of 5 champion will not be in the top 12. So you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a maximum of needing to be in the top 11 in terms of, or you need to be in the top 10 if you're getting an at-large bid. And for Miami, they got to go win the conference if they're going to make it to the playoff, because you're not getting in as an at-large bid in the ACC this year.
Yeah, I mean, right now, just checked with CBS Sports, and CBS Sports has them down as a probability of 14%.
That's generous.
Yeah, which is weird because they also have this winning the ACC championship at 2%.
That's your actual odds right there.
Yeah, because if you don't win the championship, they ain't getting in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what math they're.
Yeah, the math on that was a little weird, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's right now 2%
Mm-hmm.
of winning the ACC championship.
Hey, I'm going to throw this in there too. Is that this whole Miami conversation also has baked in the assumption that Miami is going to win the remainder of their football games,
right,
which is the furthest thing from a conclusion that you can draw about Miami right now.
mm-hmm.
Because they have to play NC State this week, then they get Virginia Tech, which is fine, but then they get Pittsburgh at the end of the year, who's playing some of their best football right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, Pat Narduzzi came out and said it this week. He said this game against Notre Dame doesn't matter. He said, I don't care about this game against Notre Dame. They can go out here and hang 100 on us for all I care.
Right.
We need the next 2 after that. And he's right, because those are the 2 conference games. Those are the ones that Pitt needs to win to make the ACC title, and then they have to win the ACC title, and they're in. But that's the only way an ACC team is getting to the college football playoff this year.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how many teams you throw in there, you have to win that ACC title this year. Otherwise, you will not be in that college football playoff from the Atlantic Coastal Conference.
No, you won't. And I just don't see how you can be bullish on the Hurricanes, because they've been consistently inconsistent for 2 years in a row now.
Yeah. I'll throw something else out there that I saw, and I went on a tirade yesterday talking about the way ESPN's changed into clickbait and stuff like that, and I get something that comes across my phone today. Paul Feinbaum and Mad Dog are talking SEC and how many teams they can get in, and whether or not a 3-loss Texas team would get into the college football playoff. And I can tell you sitting here today, no, a 3-loss Texas team does not get into the college football playoff. They don't. Neither does Oklahoma. Like the Oklahoma and not A&M, Oklahoma and Texas are up against it this weekend. Oklahoma goes to Alabama. Texas goes to Georgia. The 2 new entrants are looking at playoff death this weekend, and that's generous at most, because you've got a team in Oklahoma who has John Mateer, who's averaged 183 passing yards a game since he came back from his hand surgery, and you got a Texas team that every time they play Georgia, they haven't been able to move the football under Steve Sarkisian. So they're not in good spots whatsoever, and if they lose these games, not only should they not, like, Well, not only will they not make it, they don't deserve to make it either. You lose 3 games, you shouldn't make the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that the Big 12 was just sitting back and they have their hands kind of clasped together and they're like, "Dear God, please." Because guess who's sitting at 13 right now, right behind Texas and Oklahoma? Utah
Yep.
and BYU. If the Big 12, with the way the ACC has worked out this year and the way the SEC has the ability to work out this year, if the Big 12 gets 3 teams in this playoff, that is a massive win for that conference.
Mm-hmm.
Right, your mark. As it's almost a flag plant on the ACC in terms of we are the third best conference.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got. I mean, Texas Tech may end up being in the top 6, maybe even 5.
Yeah, top 4 possibly, because I
Yeah.
mean those top 4 teams are going to have to play each other at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if they don't have to play each other, that means they lost somewhere along the way.
Right. And Pitt, just checking their schedule. After the Notre Dame game, they have to beat a Georgia Tech team, and that's at home. And
Mm-hmm.
then as you said, they end the season in Miami.
Mm-hmm. They do.
But I'll say this: Pat Narduzzi is a damn good football coach,
Yes, he is.
and I I wouldn't sleep on Pitt.
Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, the I think the year is like it's dating back to like 2013. But the only I think it is 2013. The only school other than Clemson and Miami to win an ACC title from 2013 to now is Pitt.
Yeah, they won it in 2020.
Hmm. When they had Kenny Pickett at quarterback.
Right.
That's the infamous fake slide that got
Yeah.
banned immediately after.
Right. So and now it's where you begin to drop your hips,
Hmm.
and actually there was a game, I forget who it was. It was the past weekend where the ball placement, because the guy went into the slide, and because it was where he dropped his hips, it was a they didn't get the first down because where he dropped the hips and where he ended up landing, and from the slide
Hmm.
was a couple yards back. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was the Kenny Pickett rule.
Hmm.
But it's an interesting situation now with what's headed down the road here for both Pitt and Miami. But
Yeah.
three teams from that conference is not out of the question.
No, it's not. And like can't overstate it enough how big of a win it would be for the Big 12 and just their image overall. Because I feel like the brand image of the Big 12, especially over these last 2 years, has taken a bit of a hit
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the quality of football that's being played. And when I watch Texas Tech, I'm not sure I can say the same about BYU and Utah. Not no
Mm-hmm.
disrespect, they're really good teams. But when I watch Texas Tech, I think they're in that upper echelon of football teams. I think they're one of the 5 best football teams in football right now. I would have
Mm-hmm.
them above Ole Miss, which I know they aren't. I would have them above Georgia, which I know they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they are above Ole Miss. They're sitting at number 6. I would have
Right.
them above Georgia, which they aren't right now. Their
Yeah.
defense is fantastic. They've rolled 2 quarterbacks in and out of there. It's been pretty seamless. They've got a stable of receivers. Cameron Dickey's been fantastic for them this year, running back. Whether it's been Baron Morton or Will Hammond, who Hammond actually ended up tearing his ACL earlier this year, about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. But they've rolled through them, and Joey McGuire is going about this in very much a new age of college football. He is the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he is, and he knew that was his strength. That if he could be a CEO of a football team, that he could be a successful head coach. He's stayed true to the model. He's been a fantastic culture builder, motivator. He's handled the NIL well. They've built the roster well. And right now, Texas Tech is rolling. And not only are they rolling, they're probably going to roll right to a Big 12 title and a college football playoff appearance.
Well, I mean, when you, I don't think anybody comes close to Texas Tech and the amount of money they're spending on that team.
Oh, no. No, they poured more, and I will, and probably continue to pour money into that team. I mean, you got a guy that's from Savannah, Georgia, and the number one defensive
Mhm.
player in the country for 2027 that's committed to Texas Tech. The school that finished second for him was Georgia. It tells you just how much money they're pouring in to be able to pull a kid out of Kirby Smart's backyard that's on the defensive side of the
Mhm.
football. It's the hard, people talk about recruiters pulling a defensive guy that Kirby Smart has dug his heels in on
Mhm.
away from the state of Georgia is the hardest thing to do in football. Mike Norvell failed with KJ Bolden a couple
Mhm.
years ago. It's like an impossible battle because of how good of a recruiter Kirby Smart is. But Texas Tech has done it.
And next week we'll have as a guest Jason Watkins, whose job it is to cover the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and he'll kind of give us the backstory on how they, you know, have seized the mantle of the top team in that conference. And that conference is there's nothing wrong with parity if the parity is good.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about BYU and Utah, the the Holy War guys,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they're good football teams. But Texas Tech is a level above them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they stumbled in what is it? Is it Tempe for
Yeah.
Arizona State?
Hmm.
So they stumbled there earlier in the year on a Friday night, and
Right.
that's really been a one-off result for them. Everything else has just been pretty much pure domination, and that goes for BYU and Utah as well.
Hmm.
They haven't been spared that measure either. What I
Well, and
will
then
say,
ASU slipped a little bit, but they didn't slip that much.
no, this was when Sam Levitt was still healthy and playing
Hmm.
as
Right.
well. So it was a good, if there is a sense, if there is such a thing, it was a good loss.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that I'll say in terms of Texas Tech and their NIL, I respect the heck out of Texas Tech's NIL a hell of a lot more than I respect somebody like Texas. When Steve Sarkisian gets out there and he's like, "Man, we're just building relationships." After they took a guy out of the state of Georgia that Kirby Smart had dug his heels in on, and
Hmm.
Tyler Atkinson here in this 2026 class, he's like,
Hmm.
"Man, we're just great at building relationships." Talking about a guy who'd been there 3 times versus a guy who'd been coming to Georgia for since he's in 8th grade.
Right.
It wasn't your relationships. There's actual proof of the fact that it really probably wasn't your relationships. But get up there and say whatever you want to. These guys have oil rigs out front of their stadium, showing off how their NIL is. I
Right.
I like that a lot better because it's legal. Just own it, and they're owning it, and I like that.
Oh, and that's the thing I think that has been really good at Texas Tech is that they do they want you to know. They
Hmm.
want everybody to know. We got the money, we're spending it.
Yep.
They're taking the George Steinbrenner approach, which
Yeah.
is, I'll pay. You just let me know, who's the kid, who do we want, how much is it going to take to get him.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you what that does. I think it scares Texas.
It probably does. It probably scares A&M too.
Oh yeah.
I, I know Texas has a bit more of a superiority complex when it comes to that state and the way they view that university and that job. But I think A&M's probably right there in the camp of understanding that this is a team that very much, if they continue to pour money in the way they're pouring it into, can kind of take a hold of that state of Texas in terms of college football.
Well, I would love to see Texas A&M and Texas Tech play
Hmm. To be
because
honest
they'll
with you,
beat them. They would beat Texas. That just leave that off the
yeah,
table.
that's what I like. Uh, Going back to that, would a three-loss Texas get in? I think it's interesting because you also got to look at Texas' schedule. They still play Georgia, and then they play A&M at the end of the year.
Right.
And I think they lose both of those games, to be honest with you.
They certainly are. I mean, even if they split,
Hmm.
okay, which is reasonable,
Yeah.
there's no way in hell you're going to put a four-loss team in the playoffs.
No, I
And I'm not sure you could get it. I don't think it's 3 loss team gets in play.
no. I gave my hot take a few weeks ago when they were going on the road to play at Mississippi State. I said I
Mm-hmm.
thought Texas would lose 3 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
That take died a valiant death, uh, seeing as how they beat Mississippi State in overtime and they won that Vanderbilt game by 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
So don't let Arch's passing numbers, going up, fool people into believing Texas is something that they aren't. They are still an extremely flawed football team
Mm-hmm.
and a unit that was supposed to be a real strength of theirs. That defense. There's only 2 times they've looked good in conference play, and that's when they played Kentucky and that's when they played Oklahoma when John Mateer was like, what was it, like 4 days removed from a hand surgery or
Right.
something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So, they have problems on both sides of the football.
We real quick, we got some games tonight for those of you who want to watch some action. We got Toledo at Miami of Ohio, 7 o'clock, ESPN2, Jay Alter and Rocky Broham on that. You got Northern Illinois at Massachusetts. That's a 7 o'clock game. Again, that's a action game. Cooper Boardman and Craig Harbaugh on the call. And then you got Buffalo at Central Michigan. That also is a action game, and that is on CBS Sports Network with Dave Ryan and Adam Berman on that call. Tomorrow night, which is Thursday night, we've got pro football. We'll get to that in a second, but it's Troy at Old Dominion. And let's see what's going on. Clemson at Louisville and Minnesota at Oregon are two primetime games that you got coming up on Friday night. So there's some pretty darn good, action in that regard coming up over the next few days, which we will get to. Tomorrow night's game, which of course is week 11 of your NFL football season, is let's see, what is it? What do we got? The Jets in New England. That's what we got. Then the Sunday morning game is Washington, Miami. You talked about that in Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sunday night is Detroit, Philadelphia, and Dallas, Vegas. For those of you who would like to sleep on Monday night, you've got that opportunity. That's not going to be very good, but that's what we're looking at coming down the pike here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think real quick, we'll touch on the NFL for just a couple quick minutes. Multiple sources out there right now as they handicap the MVP award in football have put it on Matthew Stafford out at Los Angeles and what he's done over his past, handful of games. And there's still plenty of football left, but it's hard not to look at Matthew Stafford and say, he's done some pretty amazing stuff.
It's kind of Stafford and May right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think a guy that probably should deserve a little more recognition for what he's done in terms of leading and kind of controlling an offense, really, and they wouldn't be where they are right now without him, is Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
He has been the Colts offense. I know people talk about Daniel Jones, and him playing better, and he has played much better. Like, I'm not taking credit away from Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones is able to do what he's been able to do because of that offensive line and the way that Jonathan Taylor's been running the football.
No, I don't think there's any question. And, a lot of, many times, just like we've talked about before, the MVP does go to a quarterback. And right now, it's hard to argue about Matthew Stafford not being there, but we still have a ton of football to be played, and there's some people who may end up in that conversation toward the end of the season that aren't on the radar right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, absolutely.
So
I mean,
see.
the Chiefs have turned it around really since they got back Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. They added
Right.
speed into that receiver room, and now all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes is right back in that conversation. And the Chiefs are looking like the Chiefs that you really expected them to be preseason as well.
Absolutely. And it's I don't think right now that we're going to see a lot of Pat Mahomes MVP conversation toward the end till things get heated up toward the end of the season. Same thing. I don't, since he's come back, Lamar Jackson has been off the hook again, playing outrageous football. So you never know what goes on with that. And with Jackson Dart in protocol, it looks like the Giants are going to start their quarterback, Jameis Winston, this week. So if you're doing fantasy, you may, and you have,
Is it Jameis or Russell? Who's going to go?
I got Winston.
Winston. Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
He was a last minute ad.
Yeah, he was. I know we touched on it on Monday, talking about Brian Daboll and his firing. I would also like to add that I don't think Brian Daboll did that bad of a job in New York, just based on the cards that he was dealt. I feel like he was kind of dealt a rather unfair hand, and kind of he was given a trash bag and told to make a winner out of it. And he wasn't able to do that. I'm not sure who could. So I think he's probably going to land on his feet in some form of an offensive coordinator role somewhere, probably relatively soon after the season ends.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's where it's headed from that standpoint. And trying to think if there's anybody else that we could that we have out there that may not be playing at this point at the best of their abilities. No, I can't think of anybody. Can you?
In terms of just teams and head coaches that
Yeah.
might be on the outs,
Mm-hmm.
you have Miami.
Yeah, it could be a dead man walking.
You have Atlanta. Vegas won't fire Pete Carroll. I'm trying to think who else has been rough. Jacksonville's under a new coach. I would say Carolina's at 5-5 is probably exceeding their expectations for this year. So Canales is fine. The Jets, maybe, depending on how bad that thing goes. I know it's year one under Aaron Glenn, but it's not out of the realm now for coaches to get fired after 1 year if they just don't think they're the answer. So there's that one as well. But yeah, no, it feels like it might be a relatively slower coaching cycle in terms of the NFL this year. I don't know. Like, there's not really glaring places that are going to fire. I think Miami is probably going to part ways with Mike McDaniel once the season's over, but they have committed to him for the rest of the season, which, by the way, is a move that I like. I like them committing to a guy for the rest of the season and just riding it out. You can fire him and you can bring an interim in. What good does that do you? I really don't know, other than just more humiliation, I guess.
Well, in the pro game, you can get away with it. So I don't see how that is a wise thing to do. It's not like you're going to hire a new coach in the middle of the season.
No.
This is not hockey.
Nope.
So that's the way that goes. So, all right, tell you what, we're going to get out of here. We got tomorrow we'll talk about some fun stuff, Thursday night football, and we'll get into some more of the playoff scenarios. And you've got an opportunity to give us a preview of what you think is going to be the fun games to watch on TV this week. And we'll go from there.
Absolutely.
All right, gang. Thanks a lot for joining us. And we will be back tomorrow about the same time. And until then, have a wonderful day. Okay.